Und wenn jemand mich schmeckt der Kaffee süßer, lieblicher als 1000 Küsse, müder als Muskatenwein. Ei, ei, wie schmeckt der Kaffee? Ei, ei, schmeckt der Kaffee süßer, lieblicher als 1000 Küsse, milder als Muskatenwein, milder als Muskatenwein. Schmeckt der Kaffee süßer, lieblicher als 1000 Küsse, milder als Muskatenwein. Ei, ei, wie schmeckt der Kaffee? Ei, ei, wie schmeckt der Kaffee süßer, lieblicher als 1000 Küsse, milder.
And hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between. How the heck are ya? I am the Lavender Lady, and this is Coffee with Lavender, and we've got some wonderful guests to be here with you this noon, this morning, this evening, this afternoon, wherever you might be around this not pancake earth. Um, what has happened recently is that the U.S. government is now open for business. Well,
Kind of.
in a practical sense, as well as what they usually do. Okay. Um, okay, maybe for about 3 weeks we almost have normalcy going on here. But the point to think about with this is, why did it happen? How did it happen? What can we do to prevent the sort of damage that we've incurred over the last 5 weeks from happening again? And to that effect, I have my two guests with me this today, being Faye, the Wonder Lady,
Hi.
who has been on my show many times previously and is always welcome here, and Luciano Gonzalez from Luciano's Logic, who I've had on previously, and welcome again, Luciano. Um, let's get started with this.
Yeah.
Um, I first saw a tweet that you had made that we have to do to prevent this sort of thing from happening again? And why is it that it happened in the first place? Luciano, you are the one who's the insider. What's up here?
So basically, also, I sure hope that people can hear us because it seems like in the comment section people can't. But
Oh,
if you can hear me, let me know.
okay. Yeah, please let us know. You're soundless? All right, we'll fix that. Oh my, this happens every time. Every time.
This is
Okay.
always going to be fun. We might be back. I'm going to ask and check.
La 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 la.
Okay, we have this going, and I'm going to make another couple.
Oh, cool. Our audio's back.
Are we back? Oh, good.
Okay,
Did
Diana,
everybody hear? Did
do that
everybody hear?
again.
Okay, do this again.
Mhm.
Okay, fine. Um, what I was saying earlier, and not knowing that I couldn't be heard, was that we have recently had the government reopen, and this is a good thing after 5 weeks of some horrible economic damage that has been done here in the United States over this, let's call it a tantrum. And what got me thinking about making this show was a tweet that
Lives? Yeah, okay. It's silent
Oh,
again.
okay. I see exactly what happened. I see exactly what happened now. That is my fault. That is on this end. So if you saw the tweet here, um, that's what garnered my attention. And yeah, okay. That's my fault, Kate. With I didn't do that right on the what do you want to call that? The images displaying. So those are the only two images I had. Those two tweets caught my attention. Basically, what we're after is how did this happen? What can we do to prevent such damage again? Luciano,
So
take it.
So the way this happened is that both sides refused to compromise. And in fairness, the Democrats, I believe, I'm going to get slightly partisan. I think the Democrats did the right thing by not compromising. I think that the Republicans were negotiating in bad faith. I also think the policies that they were proposing were dangerous. So I think the Democrats were doing the right thing.
Agreed.
And the Republicans they tried to negotiate. I will say that they did a thing that counts as a negotiation. I'm not going to say it was a good negotiation, but they did it. So did the Democrats. So don't get me wrong. I'm a Democratic Party member. I work with Democrats. I work with politicians. I have knowledge of what was going on the inside. There are people who are negotiating. There are people who are doing their best on both sides to actually make sure that this sort of nonsense doesn't happen. But the way that we prevent this from happening again in the future is we pass legislation that ensures that there is a universal automatic continuing resolution. And what that is that means that any government agencies that don't get funded through a typical budget have an amount of money that they can use. Also, there's a cat there. Have an amount of money that they can use. So that way there is time for the government to negotiate a true budget. And we also just make ourselves more knowledgeable about what happens during a government shutdown, because there are lots of vital questions that people have. Also, that is very distracting. There's a lot of questions that people have because they don't understand what happens when a government shuts down. This is the first time that a government shutdown has ever lasted this long, and it's raised a lot of questions about the stability of the country when the government is in a weird sort of on-off state.
Yeah, definitely. Now, this, if I remember correctly, is not something historical. This has only been what, about the past 40 years, 30 years, something like that. Do you
More or
know?
less.
Do you know offhand what legislation or whatever it was that allowed this to happen?
I think it's an um interpretation of the Anti-Deficiency Act, or a lapse of appropriation, that has to do with uh pushing agendas for the fiscal year, and if they can't come to um a resolution or continuing resolution, is it?
I
That
believe
they
that's what
will
they're called
shut
CRs.
down either partially or fully. So, if there is a, what's the word, political impasse on these proposed bills, um, government agencies and service, they close down what they call non-essential operations, which also gives people who hate taxes something to stand on, because they're like, well, if they're non-essential, why do we have to fund them anyway? And
I
but
see
the thing
that.
is, a lot of them, a lot of these departments uh, have things to do with safety, um, protection of property,
Okay.
uh, respective essential areas, basically, and including some very important things like, I don't know, security at airports and security at the border. But he wants a wall. But screw that. Let's just shut down security.
Yeah, I noticed that Matt, the Godless Iowan, has written in the side chat here. 1980 was the very first shutdown, and it is a loophole in the way the Constitution is written. Okay, so I've learned something today. It's not a total waste. The darn thing is here. I mean, when I called into Randy Rhodes' show, I think it was last week. One of the things she had said there was, I think what you had also said, Luciano, was a permanent sort of continuing resolution to keep government funded no matter what. One of the things I'm wondering about how you do, what you need to do, and is how you do it, because let's remember now, we've got a hyper partisan government right now. Um, it's really showing up with the House being taken by the Democrats, the Senate still firmly held by Republicans, and with the immense power that the Senate Majority Leader has. I mean, that man, that particular person, has been able to essentially stall government for the last 5 years. He was instrumental in the shutdown of 2013. Um, how can we get any legislation passed that would help correct the situation we have now? Or are there any non legislative methods?
So non-legislative methods are difficult, but the reality here is that if I'm allowed to get partisan for a second, we
Sure.
have one party that more or less wants to govern, the Democrats, and then we have a party whose leadership doesn't want to govern. Now, I'm not going to say the Republicans don't want to govern, because that's unfair, and it's also untrue. There are Republicans who are on our side. There are Republicans who realize the futility of government shutdowns, who are well aware of the harm that'll bring to pretty much every person in this country. Like, there are people who are disgusted by this on both sides. But the Democrats have leadership who actually want to end government shutdowns. They want to stop making them political weapons, and they don't want to capitulate to the president. Whereas Senate Leader Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, is
Oh, him.
allowing, yeah, that guy.
Mm.
Heck, that guy. He's a
Yeah,
bad
Mr.
person.
Mr. Turtle. Yeah.
He's a bad human being, and he's a worse politician. He's also very unliked by his own party. The
I
reality is, we
I
should
understand
pressure
that.
him.
Yeah.
We should pressure him to resign or to let someone else be the Senate Majority Leader, because he's given the president Like, in essence, what he's done is give the president the power to make policy, which makes all of Congress kind of null. The Congress is the branch of the government that's supposed to make policy. And for them to allow the president to have that much power, in essence, invalidates the Congress. And that's really frustrating. It's something that lots of Republicans are aware of, and it's something that they hate just about as much as many Democrats do.
Question: how does he do this?
So he does this by only allowing legislation that the president would sign to go onto the floor. And that means that any legislation that he thinks that the president wouldn't sign isn't given a fair shake. That kind of changed on Thursday when they also, I'm talking really loudly. I don't know how well people can hear me. Um, that kind of changed on Thursday when he agreed to allow both the old legislation that passed both chambers and was then vetoed by the president, as well as other legislation that the president himself was responsible for to be voted on. Both failed. Neither one of them went through. Neither one of them was signed. And that was the reason why on Friday the president agreed to sign legislation that would reopen the government.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if I have this correctly. Some of the things I was seeing in the news was some of the reason that this reopening occurred on a civilian level. I think I heard something or read something to the effect that it was either air traffic controllers or TSA at LaGuardia basically shut the place down for a day, and it was we can't have this. We've got to do something. Uh, do you have any knowledge of any of that or how that worked?
That was probably the decisive factor. That was probably like the single biggest thing that changed things, because before now, airports were kind of delayed. And there were routine mistakes being made in air traffic control towers, all of which had the potential to be catastrophic. Also, the cat was looking at the camera just now. Very nice cat.
Sylvia is definitely a camera whore here.
But yeah,
She's a good
like,
kitty.
everything changes when airports start shutting down. That's one of the potential signs of an oncoming catastrophe. And that the other big thing would be, in my opinion, when food stamps start being super severely affected and potentially run out.
Yeah, that was the interesting thing. Is I did not know how the food stamp program would work. I actually am a beneficiary of said program. I received 15, that is $15 monthly in SNAP benefits, and I had received a bit of a letter a little while ago detailing. Let's see, dear SNAP recipient, I am writing to let you know about changes to your SNAP benefits for the month of February. Blah blah blah. And let's see. The USDA has not told states if SNAP payments will be paid beyond February. So there we had something very potentially catastrophic where people were already not eating,
Mhm.
but where a lot more people were going to be not eating. And my understanding also was that something I did not know was you had to apply and then recertify with a license to accept food stamps. The application I knew about, the recertification was what I did not know about. And a lot of stores had not recertified in time to, beat the shutdown. And we had stores that could not accept the food stamps that people had. And this was another very, very damaging thing with, if all you have to buy food is food stamps and you can't use them. Oh, excuse me, please. Still a little bit of the coughing and the throat scratching is
Mhm.
going on here. Yeah, if you have them and still can't use them, it's you're still going to go hungry. I mean, Faye, you have anything to weigh in on here or?
Yes. From what I understand, the government shutdown did not affect or would not affect anyone on HUD who already had HUD. However, HUD had a contingency plan for the shutdown, because a lot of the housing, if
Okay.
it was tenant based rental assistance, anyone who was in the middle of being processed, or anyone who was in an emergency, like switching apartment type thing, or needed tenant protection vouchers for public housing, or other family actions during the shutdown, um, they would not be they would not be able to be processed. HUD employees would not be able to assist them at all.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
there isn't any there are two different types of vouchers for HUD, and basically, like, one is Section 8, but the payments that are budgeted on, what do you call it, tenant paychecks, they 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 wouldn't go through. And also, the homeless grants, they would continue, but not for veterans, from
And
what I
what's
understand.
the deal
No,
there?
veterans wouldn't get paid. Veterans wouldn't get paid, but their housing might get paid. It was,
Okay.
the
Okay.
article I read was very kind of like, we might, a lot of the grants would be blocked. Anything new would be blocked. Anything in transition would be blocked. And when it comes to people signing up for HUD, it is a 2-year waiting period.
Yes,
So
and
it would extend their waiting period.
I was the one who got really lucky because, as well as Snap, I also am a beneficiary of HUD. This wonderful place you see here on camera is a HUD unit, which had me terrified because I did not know what was going to happen, how the contracts were paid, that sort of thing. Mine is did you call it tenant based? It's not project based. Um, I know of people who were going to be having some tremendous problems, facing eviction because their contracts would, as far as I understood it anyway, their contracts would not be paid to the landlord, and of
Right.
course they didn't have enough to cover rent. I mean, here my rent is the market rent here is approximately triple, not quite triple, but approximately what I actually do pay. So that's a big difference there. And I'm gonna say Matt said it earlier. He said, I repeat my statement from before. Government shutdown is a way of saying, do as we say, or we will kill the poor. And he's got it right there. And that's mainly, in my mind anyway, the main reason that we've got to solve this problem, because what has been affected the most in this particular shutdown is what those of us who are, shall we say, financially challenged, our help, if you is greatly affected. It is, the rug is pulled out from under us, and we don't have what a lot of the politicians have. We don't have secondary sources of income. We don't have assets upon which we can draw to get through something like this. Sorry, Donald Trump. Sorry, Wilbur Ross. We cannot take odd jobs. We cannot take a loan to get by. Uh, I have a feeling they know that this is the case and just don't care, or maybe they don't know at all. Um, and again,
Uh,
how do we get the partisan? How do we get beyond the damn partisanship?
let's not forget that the government shutdown this time, um, they estimate the cost of shutting down cost the country $6 billion.
Yeah, and that's already more than
What Trump
I'm going
wanted
to
for the wall was 5.7 billion.
yeah, I mean I'm going to say it, and hey, if somebody's going to come after me for saying this, I'm going to call him the extortionist in chief, because what he did with this is nothing short of saying, if you don't give me what I want, I am going to hurt you. What else do you call that? And
Well, don't forget this government shutdown is only over for 3 weeks.
yes,
We may
absolutely,
actually resume another shutdown, and if that happens, it's going to cost us more.
yes,
I
and
think
that's
since he cost us the amount of money for the wall, he should definitely give up on it because why should we have to pay for this?
well, there's another point to this, and we were talking about this in the green room before it started, before the show started, and we might as well bring it on air. Um, the reasons for the shutdown are not necessarily the wall. Um, you know,
Hmm.
these actions here could be considered criminal. And how do you do something about that? Um, because as far as I understand it, it's at the very least a tradition to not indict a sitting president. But if a sitting president is committing a crime that is ongoing, wouldn't you want to stop the commission of that crime?
I don't think anyone should be above the law.
There you
So
are.
indicting a sitting president is complicated. One of the nice things, though, is that he won't always be president. And when he isn't
Well,
president, look, he's either going to die in office or he's not going to be president before at some point before the end of his life.
yeah, there you go. It's what do we do in the meantime? Because, okay, if he lives through office, I mean, he's an old man.
Mhm.
He may die in office or something. I'm not suggesting anything nefarious here.
Mhm.
Um, but that would still be, something a little less than 2 years. And you can do a lot of damage in 2 years. Look what he did in 5 weeks. Um, and I'm trying to think of exactly what the other things we were talking about before we came in here. Um, all of that taken together is potentially disastrous. I mean, one of the things I'm seeing is that it's entirely possible that the people we have in office do not want the governmental system we've had up until now. They want a different sort of governmental system. Um, One I joke about all the time, when I say that I'd like an autocracy with me as the autocrat. That second half of the statement is the important part here, but that's a joke. But I don't think they're joking. What do you say?
They're they're not joking, and it's dangerous because like the reality is they don't even really want to govern. That's
Yeah.
the thing that really gets me about this. Like, Godless Iowan commented earlier when I was talking about how I don't want to like lump the whole party together, but the reality is a lot of Republicans don't want to govern. They want small government, which doesn't work. The reality is, especially in a country this size, we need a government. Someone could try to argue that we could go with a government slightly smaller than this, but if you want a small government, you have to either kill off a whole lot of people or you have to like figure out some way to make the government way more efficient than it is or than it ever could be. There's no way a small government would work for this country, especially if we want states to have individual rights, if we want states to have individual powers and the ability to make their own decisions, which Republicans want. So the reality is the Republicans don't want a smaller party than this unless they just want power, which they do.
Mm-hmm. And then who was it that said? It might have been Rhodes that said something to the effect of the impeachment process is a political solution to a criminal problem. And you see where we get with politics now. I mean, we're one to impeach Donald Trump. Let's set
Uh,
aside the horrific prospect of President Pence. Um, that impeachment would take time. I mean, we could get articles of impeachment through the House, certainly, with the House as it is now. The problem is the Senate, because the Senate is the body that would try the president who has been impeached. And no matter what, no matter what the evidence is, no matter how high it's stacked, I'm not sure that they would do the right thing.
I agree. That's my stance on this whole thing as well, especially because the reality is impeachments, even if we remove them from power, we have to think about all the horrendous damage they've done. And they haven't just done damage to people in the United States. The reality is their influence, their cancerous powers and their cancerous decisions have affected people all over the world. These people need to be held to true justice. And I was in the comment section a second ago. People were talking, I think Professor Fez said that age will get them in the end, which is true, but age isn't justice.
Right.
Like, there's a big difference. If they die a natural death and they are free to go, they haven't been seen in front of a court, no one's talked about how to like make sure that they pay back the damage they've done in some way or another, then they just died. And they were able to ruin millions of lives with their power.
I have a dumb question.
And I probably have a dumb answer.
There's no such thing as a dumb question.
Okay. You know the International Criminal Court?
Okay, yes.
I think it's held in the Netherlands.
Yep.
The Hague.
Part of the thing, it's crimes against humanity and also war crimes, international crimes, etc., etc. If we are mistreating, people who are fleeing, and there are international laws to protect them, and we are jailing them and or killing their kids, could our government be called to pay for it? Or am I just being childish with this question?
Well, I don't know. I'm gonna defer to you in a second, Luciano, but my biggest concern is calling on the carpet is one thing. Enforcement is quite another. And I don't know if that could be enforced. What do you think, Luciano?
So, if I remember correctly, and I might be wrong, the International Criminal Court just tried a couple of weeks ago to try the first president who had to sit in front of them, and I don't think it worked. Give me 1 second to Google it, because I remember reading about
no problem. It's always good to have the better information, rather than talking out your butt. But
well, I do know that in the 80s, what do you call it? Someone put forth the idea for the ICC to deal with illegal drug trades and things like that, and I'm not sure if that worked, but I would think that people seeking asylum and being mistreated would be considered to be a crime against humanity, and especially since we have like international agreements and international laws, if we're not doing our part, or we just decide to break these or commit a crime against humanity, I would think that we would actually, have to deal with it.
So I did a quick Google search, and so on January 15th, at the very least, that was when the article was published. So just a couple of days ago, the International Criminal Court in The Hague acquitted Ivory Coast ex-president Laurent Gbagbo. Totally butchered that last name.
Damn.
He was accused of supporting violence in the wake of the disputed 2010 election that left 3,000 dead and over 500,000 people displaced. And he was acquitted. So the idea that we're going to be able to use the International Criminal Court to do anything significant to President Trump, probably not unless there's a significant change to
I
the
thought so.
International Criminal Court.
I thought so. That's the unfortunate thing, because what's happening then
But
is
what
that
were the charges?
I can look more into the detail. We could actually talk about
Okay,
this on another
because
live
when it
stream.
comes to genocide under the ICC, there's like really specific things: killing members of a group, causing bodily or mental harm to members of a group, uh, inflicting conditions that would bring on physical destruction, prevent births, and forcibly transferring the children of the group to another group.
So
That
from
is considered to be genocide.
from what it looks like, from what I'm reading, I'll try to pop this article into the comment section. Can I get a wrench?
oh, you don't have a wrench.
Yeah.
I am so sorry, Luciano. Say something and I'll give it to you forthwith.
Yeah.
And,
I'm gonna go and
There we
grab that
go. There we
article so that way
go.
people can read it.
the crimes against humanity are, I'm looking it up:
All right, sweetie, you
murder,
got it.
extermination, enslavement, deportation, imprisonment, torture, rape, sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, forced pregnancy, enforced sterilization, sexual violence, persecution, enforced disappearance of persons, apartheid, or other inhumane acts. Well, there are a lot of charges against ICE that fall into these categories.
I'm gonna plug in the article.
And if
Okay,
you stick
yeah,
someone
there
in a
are.
private prison to work in a private prison, I would call that enslavement.
Well, there the other thing, yeah, that I had totally forgotten about until you just mentioned. Part of the thing that was going on with this shutdown, and people were being told they had to work without pay. There was the question of whether or not that was legal, because that might be considered a form of slavery, a form of involuntary servitude. So we've got that going as well.
Right, and these people are seeking asylum. So we have that. I mean, if you look at their website, um, I would think that the United States would actually have to consider itself eligible to be charged. I don't know how well that would go over, but it would be an interesting thing. But then again, maybe I'm just being immature.
Well, okay. Well, there's another thing you said. It's interesting how things are reminding me of other things. The mention of age earlier in
Mhm.
reference to the politicians. Something we had talked about before coming on air was the possibility of changing the
Well, we need to set
eligibility age
standards.
to hold an office to be
Mhm.
younger. Would that help at all, and how would it help if it did?
So it would help in theory. It would solve part of the problem, assuming two major things. Assuming we can get young people to run for office, which we actually can. It's shown that they're all over the country. There are a lot of places where young people run for office. And the House has a lot of young people as well. So we know for a fact that young people run. But the issue, especially if we lower the age for Senate, is can we get young people to win races? Because it's not enough to
Hmm.
lower the age if the people who actually win the elections are
It might be
still old.
the JFK effect, though. You
That's
know,
true.
That
the
would be a good
TV
thing.
radio thing. You know,
Yeah, I
young, good-looking, vibrant, next to crotchety old asshole who can't even use a Google Calendar.
Yeah,
and then
that
the
should be the new rule. If you
I'm
don't,
just saying it might be a thing.
that should be the new rule. If you don't know how to use Google Drive, you shouldn't hold office.
Hey, wait a minute. That means I can't run.
I can teach you. I can. We look. This is a
We can
problem that
teach
can
you.
be fixed. I can
Right.
teach you how to use it.
And then
We
there's
may
the
not
other
have the
thing.
test for religious background, but maybe we should test for whether or not you can handle technology.
I feel like handling
Yeah.
technology matters a lot more than what church you go to. If you're gonna be in charge, if you're gonna have the power to make laws for an entire state or an entire country, I'm pretty sure it matters that you know how to use Twitter.
I don't think that our blah, 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 blah,
Uh,
current government or the government within the last I don't know how many years has actually been capable of even thinking about internet laws or internet standards. It's ridiculous. They don't even know how the internet actually works.
And unfortunately, for people who don't know how to use it, the internet is vital to the operation of pretty much anything anymore. It's
Well, we
what the
lost a lot of control of the internet in the past. I
yes,
don't know what.
Last like 3 years, yeah.
Yeah, last 3 years we lost a lot of control over the internet, and prices for the internet in the United States are definitely going to go up because of this.
yeah,
We lost a certain amount of control, and companies are going to take advantage. Whether they don't have to take advantage, but we all know that they're going to take
of course they
advantage
will.
because they have the
Yeah.
law on their side right now.
Um, and then the other thing that just came to my mind, when we were talking about younger
Mhm.
ages to run, term limits is another thing. How might that help or not help? Would they help at all? I've heard the
I think what would help
something
us the
floated,
most is getting rid of the electoral college so that we can have more than a two-party system.
and that's a problem because now that's a constitutional issue, and you have to get the states involved.
Well, that's
So
the thing about the Constitution. It can be amended, and amendments can be amendment too.
We're
yeah,
gonna. I strongly agree with that sentiment, but in our current system, like not even in our current system with the current party composition, not even the Republicans would be able to get a particularly partisan amendment through.
yeah,
That's true.
and the other thing is that as far as doing anything that would lessen the Republican influence, you have to remember that most of the state legislatures are Republican dominated. So even
Mhm.
if you got that amendment through Congress, through the House, through the Senate, you now present it to states, and how are you going to get 38 of them? That's a big problem.
The whole thing is a mess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a great system. Really, really, it is until you've got somebody who wants to play outside the rules. And that's what I'm unfortunately going to have to sound partisan at this point. That's unfortunately what the Republicans have been doing is
Well,
making
that's
it
if
impossible
things
to play by the rules.
that's if things remain at status quo. The government shutdown. I don't know what the percentage was, but there was a larger percent of Americans that blamed Trump than blamed the Democrats. There there's not less nat- natural disasters happening, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, blah blah blah. I watch the earthquake thing like all the time. There's there's no way to say, that a major earthquake's not going to occur with a significant loss of life because that kind of thing happens all over the world every day. It could strike the United States. It might strike in an area that's not California. There could be one in New York. I was reading a book by an
Yeah,
earthquake expert that says New York is overdue for a catastrophic quake, and the buildings are not built for a catastrophic quake. But the thing is, it's only a matter, I think, of time. Uh, if nothing's wrong, yeah, people can sit there and say no taxes, no this, no that. We love our Republicans. We don't want to pay, blah blah blah. Democrats just want us to pay for everything. But if they lose their homes, if they lose this, if they lose that, that's why I'm so surprised that like states like Oklahoma are actually right leaning because they frequently get wiped out by tornadoes and
Mm-hmm.
they need FEMA all the time.
Well,
But
look
if
at
you have the powers that be who will not help you rebuild your home for the sixth time in Tornado Alley, you might change the way you vote.
and look at the population, partisan population, if you will, in say a place like the most welfare recipients and food stamp recipients, et cetera, et cetera. Where are they? In places like Kentucky, solid red, and yet they need these things and are voting against their own self-interest. I don't get it. How do you convince somebody that cutting their own throat is a good thing to do? Because
God,
okay, yeah, they're waiting for the next life. Yeah, this life doesn't mean poo poo.
That's the reason they can get rid of all the trees, obviously.
Yeah, okay.
God,
Yeah, it's the pain in the butt here when you come down to it. Those of us who know that there's only the one life to be lived, we're gonna pay because they're not gonna know when they're and after they're dead.
well, look, it's not a hard thing to figure out that cutting your own throat is a bad thing. The only thing is like, you know how, and I don't want to start a will he run, will he not run, should he run, should he not run conversation. But one thing that Bernie Sanders did right, he went to places, he sat down with groups, and he talked about how policies affect people's lives. He actually went into red states, sat down with people, and got whole towns and whole communities on his side by talking about how certain policies would affect their economics. He took the time to explain, and it's not just, oh, like, oh, these people are dumb, we're just not, we're gonna skip them. No, it's people really need to take the time. Now, I mean, a lot of people do this with their YouTube channels and etc etc, but I think what we need to be careful about is whether or not we are talking down to these people,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
because we cannot afford to treat a human being who's scared, broke, frightened, uh, barely making it paycheck to paycheck because they are cutting their own throat, and then turning around and say, "Well, you deserve this because you're just stupid."
Mm-hmm.
If you turn around and you might not get through to all of them, but the thing is, how do you engage them to watch? How do you engage them to listen? How do you engage them, at the town square? Who's going to do that? Blah 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 blah. It's possible, but it would take a lot of organizing. And I mean, even if you're not running for president, and I think that's a really important thing, if someone's not running for office, if they don't have anything to gain for it, and they show up to their town halls and they start talking about what they care about, like, I don't want this. I want that. I want health care. Like, telling their people how to vote, you go to, you know, what was it? They were meeting governors or senators and telling them off and screaming about health care. I forget when
Mm-hmm.
that was, but it had an impact. People were just like, "Whoa." And it showed up on YouTube. And people are still talking about healthcare because it matters. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
some people get really freaking vicious, and they're like, "Oh, well, in this country, in that country." Well, no, there's evidence that it does work. That a national health system does work. It's just they need to be presented with the truth and with evidence. And maybe that way. Because right now you could have any politician stand in front of anyone and go, "Well, SNAP people get too much money. I mean, like $20 a month. Well, you don't need more than that, or we can half that and they'll be fine. I lived on whatever for I lived on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for 2 weeks. It's like
Yeah,
that shaming and blah blah blah. We have to be able to do something about that, but we're not going to be able to do something about that if every time Trump does something ridiculous, we all get distracted and talk about his latest antic to distract us from what's important. That's just like
yeah,
when a politician runs and they sit there and they'll just sit there and talk about reproductive rights instead of how they're going to gut your paycheck
yeah.
or how they're going to like put in some sort of like I don't know coal mining. Who that? I mean, what are we gonna do? Also, invest in VHS as a freaking nation? Oh, I
Oh
thought that
man.
VHS thing was a really good idea.
Now there's another one I'd like to talk about eventually because we're starting to come to the end of this. That's okay. That'll give us more.
I'm sorry, I went on a
No,
rant.
no problem, no problem at all. But it'll give us more topics for future.
Mm.
One of them is something that came to my mind. What effect does the more rapidly changing generations have? For example, were the slimy bastards still alive, I would be arguing with them over the use of the internet, where my internet is what their telephone was, and they don't understand that. How much of that is going on between the generations as far as governance is concerned? Um, the older crowd not quite catching up to what's really going on. Um, so there's something else to think about, and maybe we can save that for another one because it's almost 10 minutes to the hour. So to try to keep this watchable, even with that little faux pas at the beginning, why don't I throw it on to you, Luciana? What is going on with you? What have you got in store for the near future? What are we going to be seeing of you?
So I am, among other things, working with some professors to organize a lecture series, and a scholarship in the name of Jacqueline Chalamakine, who is the Guatemalan girl who died in Border Patrol Agency custody a couple of
Uh-huh.
weeks ago.
Oh my
Yes.
god.
And we are organizing. We're getting some universities interested. I'm working as the digital media organizer and coordinator, and that is a lot of fun. It's not just professors, but it's a lot of professors and political activists. People who are, most of us are Hispanic, a handful of us aren't. But we are going to be working on that. I'm going to be making videos about that in the next couple of days. I'm with Godless Cranium, Essence of Thought, and Inane Dragon, and Utida, who is Essence of Thought's girlfriend or significant other. And we have a D&D series. Our first video was uploaded and made public during this live stream. I mentioned it in the comments section. I'm going to check it out in a few minutes. It's probably about 45 minutes long. Our actual
Cool.
session went a little bit longer than that, but we had some technical stuff. So we're going to fix that, and then we're going to have longer videos from here on out.
Yay! God, that sounds good. And how about you, Faye? What do you have in store for us here in the near future? I know you're doing many things. So just tell us about some of them. And
Well,
Luciano, why don't you get the address of your YouTube channel into the side chat?
Uh, sure.
And and
uh,
and
as
go, Faye.
far as I'm concerned, I'm working on editing a video right now. I'm almost done. I'm hoping to get it done before Tuesday. But all I'm going to say is I am going to be working on a game show, and I'm not going to say anything else more about the game show. I do have a tech person behind it. Um, of course, more of Luciano and Christy Santiago.
Santiago.
Still, I,
Yes.
why did I say that wrong? I don't know. Christy
Because you're a
Santiago.
foo-foo.
It's because my mouth doesn't work most of the time. More inquisitions, more interviews. Like yeah, I just need more people to volunteer, more contacts. I'm looking for someone to help me with the outreach and scheduling and etc. etc. But one thing at a time. I'm
Okay.
also going to have like a series of essays by anonymous young people.
Okay, that sounds interesting, definitely. And by all means, Faye, why don't you as well
Oh, and
put
Snarky's going to
your
be inquisitioning me this week.
Oh
Oh,
wow, that's fun!
that's
Yay,
Yeah,
Snarky. You go put your address in the side chat as well. Why don't you? And you, Faye, please put into the side chat so everybody can
okay.
get to you kids. By all means.
But
I mean, they know how to get to me. They're already here.
true. But I don't know what direction my channel will ultimately end up at, but I do want to keep the question thing. I do want to keep that type of like theme going. I know that makes me a bit random, but that's okay.
Okay, hey, if it works, why not, right? And as far as it goes over here, yes, I'm working on coming back on a regular basis, and I'm wanting to continue the Coffee with Lavender noon Eastern and on Sundays. Please come on by, and I'm going to be canvassing around for a lot of you in the side chat that I already see, and some of you who are not going to be looking for future guests and wanting to have just a little bit of coffee and conversation going on over here. Just to have a this was a little intense today, but sometimes we need some intensity, and other times we can have sort of just a little fun on a Sunday afternoon or whatever it happens to be in your time zone. And I am just thrilled and honored to be invited into your spaces. I am so happy that you folks are actually interested in what we've got going over here. And again, I thank you many much for that. Um, so I'm also looking at doing open chats on a semi-regular basis, so we can all get together and have some fun. Just good, clean fun, and rarely is once we get to it, but that's another story. And of course, I'm going to try to do my response videos. So look forward to some of those. And for all of that, I thank you, everyone. I thank you, Luciano. I thank you, Faye,
And we thank
for
you.
being here and helping me get this going. And my many thanks to you folks. And I'm going to say, just to close this out, thanks a lot, troops. See you on the other side.
let's
And
get
head for
wait
Patreon.
before we leave. Let's get everyone up here to the next milestone. And for Diana, that's just one subscriber. So somebody
Oh,
subscribe. It's two, so she hits 250.
Yeah,
am I still at 249?
and,
Yep.
and, and do her a favor. Shout her out on Twitter.
Yep.
Shout her out on your channels. Do whatever you can, please. That's
My yeah, this one, Robert X. We're gonna have some we're gonna have some open chats as far as that goes, because I think there are some people who are doing Sunday shows. I
Yeah.
expect to be doing a few more shows as we go along, and there will be time for 8 hour 8 hour after shows when we do that. And again, I thank all you dear folks. Makes a girl feel good, and I'll put one more out. Is yeah, if you guys don't mind at all, I do run a Patreon. Um, Patreon.com, the Lavender Lady. If you want to throw me $1, that's great. If you can't afford it, that's great too. No problem. Um, but thank you for coming by anyway, and I really appreciate your. Oh my word! Oh no! I thought let's help Diana hit 250. Okay, well that's all right. No big thing. And 250K. Wait a minute. Wait. I've got to get some content together for 250K. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. And again, thanks a lot, troops. Thanks a
Peace
lot.
out,
See you
Brad.
on the other side.
Thanks for having us.